Are you an emotionally intelligent person? Have you heard of emotional intelligence before? It's otherwise known as our EQ. Not our IQ, but our EQ. And more research is coming out showing how our emotional intelligence plays a huge part in our happiness, in our well-being, in our self-esteem, in our quality of our relationships. It is a really important thing to have emotional intelligence. And the good news is that emotional intelligence can be built. We can learn to become more emotionally intelligent. But here today, we're going to talk about how to know if you are an emotionally intelligent person. And we're going to look specifically at 7 different ways to know. If you're new to me and this is the first time we're connecting, my name is Kristina, and I'm a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and an online course creator. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I work to help men and women get through the crap that is holding them back so they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And as I was mentioning, developing our emotional intelligence is definitely something that can help us like ourselves and our lives more. And the good news about this one is if there are some areas of emotional intelligence that aren't going quite as well for you right now, that it's not something that's set in stone. So emotional intelligence is not something that's fixed. It is absolutely something that we can work on and that we can develop. So I'm going to be going through 7 signs that you are an emotionally intelligent person. And if there are a few in there that you might be struggling with, then that's not a big deal. It's just areas that we can be working on and things that we can be working to sort through and deal with and develop within ourselves. So the first sign that you are an emotionally intelligent person is that you are someone who is difficult to offend. And this is a really tough one because when someone does or says something that's cruel or unkind or just kind of nasty, it feels bad. It hurts and it sucks. And that's just the truth of it. But when we become someone who is more difficult to offend, it comes from really getting to know ourselves. It comes from really developing a solid sense of self and knowing who we are, because then we're not so easily kind of swayed by the ideas or opinions and perspectives of other people. When we're clear on who we are, when we know who we are, when we're solid in who we are, then it doesn't really matter as much what other people think or what other people say, that we become self-defined, that we don't let other people define us nearly as easily, that we're just not swayable in those ways. So getting to know who you are and accepting yourself for who you are. And that doesn't mean that you're perfect or have to have it all together all the time. It just means that you know and accept yourself for who you are, imperfections and all. The next one is that you can admit your mistakes. And this is another really tough one for many among us. And I used to be someone who had a really hard time admitting to my mistakes. And it's definitely something that I've worked on. And it can be hard. It can be hard to say, I'm sorry. It can be hard to say, wow, my bad, totally my fault, or at least partly my fault. It can be hard to own up to stuff. And it was funny, a few weeks ago, I was driving in my car. And I went to make a left turn, and I was turning onto the road, and there was a crosswalk there, and there was some people crossing the street. And I didn't see them right away, but I think I startled them because I started to turn my car, and I think maybe they thought I was going to run them over, but I did see them with plenty of time, and I stopped the car, but I startled them. And this one man got very angry, and he started screaming and shouting at me and saying all kinds of nasty things. And, absolutely, the way he handled it was not appropriate, and it wasn't very nice, but I can understand too that he was scared, and sometimes when we're scared, we react in ways that aren't necessarily the most becoming. But and I just looked at him and I just sort of said, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry I didn't see you. Instead of getting really mad back and yelling at him, and getting all worked up about it, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I didn't see them right away, and I think I did startle them. Regardless of whether or not his reaction was fair, is besides the point. Just sometimes owning up to our part of it. And then if we need to, also setting a boundary and saying in this situation, it wasn't appropriate, but being able to say hey, fair enough, my bad, my mistake, but the way that you addressed it, not super cool. So we need to talk about that as well. So being able to own up to our mistakes, knowing when to say sorry, it's not taking over responsibility and taking on responsibility for things that aren't ours, but it's also not taking responsibility for the stuff that is. The next one is that emotionally intelligent people, so if you are an emotionally intelligent person, then you are somebody who takes things in stride, who takes, especially change. You take change in stride and don't get super worked up when there are changes. Now, the interesting thing about this is that most human beings find change really hard. We are among the most adaptive beings, meaning that, we can adapt well to change, but we also really resist change. We don't like change, but after we get through the transition, through the uncomfortable part, we're able to come out the other side and actually be okay. So learning that we can trust that we're going to be okay. And that's the hugest part with being better at adapting and accepting change and being able to take change in stride, is trusting that we're going to be okay. Trusting we're going to be able to work it out and figure it out and get through whatever the change is bringing. I actually wrote a whole post about this on my Instagram, and I'll link to that as well so you can read about that. One of the biggest changes I've been through in the past little while, and how I handled that, how I approached that, and now how I am really just embracing it. The next one, number 4, is that you don't get pulled in to other people's crap. Meaning that you don't get pulled you don't get pulled in, you don't get overwhelmed by other people's issues, by other people's stuff, even by other people's negativity or their complaining or whatever it is that they're dealing with. And if someone is struggling, absolutely, you can be there for them, but not get pulled into it, not getting overwhelmed, not getting stressed out with other people's problems. And that's a huge thing that comes with having healthy boundaries, is learning how to be there for someone without feeling responsible to fix them or to solve their problems for them, because that's when it gets overwhelming. That's when it gets stressful, supporting someone who's going through something, when we feel like it's up to us to fix it. So learning how to not get pulled into other people's stuff, even if it is, the stuff, like I said, if they're struggling, not getting pulled in and overwhelmed with that, but also not getting pulled into other people's kind of toxic or crappy stuff. Learning how to have healthy boundaries, learning how to walk away, learning how to say, this is not my rodeo and I'm not getting pulled into it. The next one is that emotionally intelligent people, so if you are somebody who has high emotional intelligence, you have an extensive emotional vocabulary. Interestingly enough, most people have a very small emotional vocabulary. What I mean by that is when you're describing your emotions, there are very few accurate words that you can draw on to really describe how you're feeling. Most people just resort to mad, sad, or glad. And we don't have sort of more accurate descriptive words. And that's actually a really easy fix. You can even just Google, words for emotions, or emotions, what's that called again? When you have like a picture diagram with all different like faces, like happy faces and frustrated faces and sad faces. You can just Google emotional words or emotional vocabulary, and then you'll be able to, just start looking at that. And just start taking in and sort of absorbing different words to describe your emotions, so that when you are feeling something, you can pinpoint it more accurately and you can get more comfortable and familiar with the whole gamut of human emotions. And the next one is that you are curious about other people, that you really want to understand what makes other people tick, or why they act the way they act, or why they say the things that they say. And oftentimes you might even go to curiosity before you go to judgment. So when someone is doing something that you don't understand, or that you find difficult or annoying or upsetting, you first go to curiosity. Why are they acting this way? Why are they doing this? And the really powerful thing about going to curiosity before we go to reaction or judgment or anger or frustration is that we become more responsive rather than reactive. When we can get good and curious about what's going on with someone, it doesn't mean that we excuse it. And if we can understand why someone is doing what they're doing, especially if it's not very nice what they're doing, it doesn't mean that we excuse it. It doesn't mean that it's okay if we have understanding. It just means that we're more empowered to respond in healthy, adaptive, and appropriate ways, that we're able to set healthy boundaries with them, that we're able to speak up in clear and respectful and assertive ways instead of getting reactive and getting pulled into their stuff ourselves. So getting really curious about what's going on with people, why they're doing what they're doing. So curiosity first, and then being able to respond instead of react. And then our last one, and I've mentioned this a few times already, is that if you're an emotionally intelligent person, you have really clear and really, really healthy boundaries, that you know when and how to say no, to speak up, to say when something isn't okay with you, that you know that your wants, needs, and preferences count too, and you're able to express them in healthy and respectful and clear ways. Boundaries are huge. I didn't even realize how huge boundaries were until I realized several years ago that I had really crappy boundaries, and it was causing me to feel really frustrated and really overwhelmed, and causing me to, have more bitterness and just not feeling as good as I could have been feeling. So healthy boundaries are huge. If you're somebody who struggles with boundaries, that's okay. Most of us, or at least many among us, do or have at some point, because they don't really teach this stuff in school, but they probably should. So I have a download for you. It's called 25 Ways to Say No, just to get you started. And even if you're someone who has pretty good boundaries, it always helps to know some different ways that we can say no, that we can set a boundary, that we can keep ourselves from getting overwhelmed and frustrated and bitter and feeling powerless over our own decisions. So make sure you grab that download. I'll put the link below, 25 Ways to Say No. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments in the comment section below. Which one of these resonated with you? Which one of these are you great at already? Which one of these maybe is something that you want to start working on a little bit more? Let us know in the comment section below. I love, love, love hearing from you guys, connecting with you, and having more of a conversation after the video. Also, come and join my Facebook group, goodformegroup.com, full of some of the most supportive, kind, encouraging, and fun men and women. I'll put the link to that below as well, and I'll look forward to connecting with you more there. Until next time, take good care.